You may have heard this. A fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, no? But in our little village of Am Not Tevye, you might say every one of us is a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a pleasant, simple tune without breaking his neck. It isn't easy. You may ask, why do we stay up there if it's so dangerous? We stay because Am Not Tevye is our home. And how do we keep our balance? That I can tell you in a word. That's it. End of sermon. We're done. Pretty much sums up the last 2,000 years. That's from a musical, if you didn't know. You may have heard of it. It's based on Shalom Aleicham's story called Tevia, the Dairyman. The musical is actually considered one of the greatest musicals ever written. And I remember in 1971 actually driving to the movie theater and sitting there in the theater and watching on the silver screen our heritage. It was amazing. It was incredible, the songs, the dancing, how proud we were to see it there up on the screen. Last month in Northridge, I attended the Yiddish version of Fiddler on the Roof. I must say, I thought one of the cast members was extremely attractive. If you didn't know, my wife was in the show, so I went home with one of the cast members. But I had a very different reaction some 54 years after I saw it the first time. I wept pretty much the entire show. My weeping, the pain that was in my heart, came from a realization that occurred to me right on the first song, Tradition. It stayed with me throughout the performance. It haunted me ever since. And my heart literally compelled me to speak about this today. That realization, Tevia, and the Jews of Am Not Tevye, they are the Jews that the world wants us to be. Poor, uneducated, separate from the community, meek, afraid of power, and no ability nor desire to stand up to anybody. That was the Jews in the turn of the century in Russia. That was the Jewish people literally for nearly 2,000 years since we became a diaspora nation. 4 times in the Talmud, it talks about a discussion, there's a discussion of the principle, the law of the land is the law. Our ancestors knew that in order to coexist in the lands of the diaspora, the Jewish people had to live under 2 sets of laws, Jewish law and state law. When the law of the land differed from Jewish law, the law of the land was followed. This was a survival mechanism. Surely if we abide by the law of the land, those who are in control of it will allow us to live in peace, right? And everywhere we lived, there was peace for a time. But inevitably, a scene like the one between the constable and Tevia took place in most Jewish communities. The constable says, "Oh, Tevia, I have a piece of news that I think I should tell you as a friend." Tevia, "Yes, Your Honor. And I'm giving you this news because I like you. You are a decent, honest person, even though you are a Jewish dog." Thank you, Your Honor. How often does a man get a compliment like that? And your news? We have received orders that sometime soon this district is to have a little unofficial demonstration. Not too serious, just some mischief, so that if the inspector comes along, he will see that we have done our duty. Just a little mischief, just so the inspector can see that we have done our duty. His duty was to make sure to remind the Jews that they are not human, that they aren't Russian, and that their existence was dependent upon the whim of the Tsar. What could Tevye do about it? Nothing. What could any of the Anatevka community do about it? Nothing. In the time between 1881 and 1921, well over 100,000 Jews were massacred in pogroms. There were literally thousands of pogroms just like the one in the play. And as I watched Fiddler this time, I wept for all of them. It was during this period, in 1903, that a book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, was first published. The book has been a stain on the Jewish people ever since. It was circulated in a Russian Empire newspaper called Znamya, which means the banner. The alleged co-writer was Pavel Krushivan, a lawyer, accomplished writer, local government deputy in St. Petersburg, and the owner of the paper. The 24 chapters, or protocols, claims to document secret meetings where the elders of Zion plan to seize economic control by manipulating global financial markets, subvert societies by destroying traditional institutions and social order, take over the media to spread misinformation and control public opinion, provoke wars and unrest to create chaos, and then out of this chaos would lead to a Jewish-led order and install a king of the Jews as the sole ruler of the world. Who? Tevya? That poor Jew in the shtetl has a secret plan to control world politics? Now, I realize that many Jews in the world around the turn of the 20th century were extremely well educated, they were intellectuals, they were academicians, they were business people living in cities, and may have been influential. But it was shtetls like Tevya's shtetl that bore the brunt of the pogroms. Tevya tells us exactly what every Jew like him wants: to scratch out a pleasant, simple tune without breaking his neck. For 17 years, this document was accepted as true, published in reputable papers, and encouraged people around the world to beware and to expose the Jews for their secret goal of domination. Have you ever heard people say that Jews control the banks, Jews control Hollywood, Jews control the markets, Jews control the government? That began with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion in 1903. In 1920, the British journalist and diplomat Lucien Wolfe published a book exposing the protocols as a forgery and a lie. And yet, exposing the truth didn't stop continuous publication of this book. It's been translated into 16 languages. In 1964, a U.S. Senate Judiciary Subcommittee released a report declaring that the protocols were a vicious lie. Why would they have to release that report 40 years after it already had been proved to be a forgery and a lie? And even that did not stop new publications of this libelous document. Here's just a brief list, not including all the TV programs and documentaries that have been based on this book over the last 50 years. In 1974, it was published in India under the title International Conspiracy Against Indians. 1985, the Islamic Propagation Organization published an English language edition in Iran. 1988, Hamas publishes its charter, and Article 32 refers to the protocols to justify the annihilation of Jewish people and the state of Israel. 2004, Okinawa, Japan. 2005, Mexico City. And there, it suggests that the Holocaust was orchestrated by Jewish conspirators in exchange for the founding of the state of Israel. 2005, the Syrian Ministry of Information published it and claimed that the elders of Zion coordinated 9/11. And most recently in 2020, the protocols is used to support the lie that Jews were responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's take a little break. Okay? Let's get back to Fiddler. The student, Perchik, he gives a lesson to the men of the town. Perchik says, "Why do you curse them? What good does your cursing do? You stand around and curse and chatter and you don't do anything. You'll all chatter your way into the grave. I learned that there is more to life than talk. You should know what's going on in the outside world." The innkeeper says, "Why should I break my head about the outside world? Let them break their own heads." And Tevia's like, he's right. As the good book says, if you spit in the air, it lands on your face. Perchik, that's nonsense. You can't close your eyes to what's happening in the world. Tevia, he's right. Then another guy comes in, he's right and he's right. How can they both be right? You know, you are also right. It's so Jewish, right? Everyone's right and everyone has an opinion. We can't close our eyes to what's happening in the world to the Jewish people. We are actually in the same kind of predicament as Anatevka. I cannot close my eyes to it. I cannot stop seeing it. And I know that there are real tensions in the Jewish community about the way Israel's navigating the war against Hamas. And please join us at 3:15. We'll spend 90 minutes talking about that. But what I'm talking about now is not Israel. I am talking about the explosion of anti-Jewish energy in reaction to Israel. That didn't begin October 2023. And I feel compelled in my bones to offer this aspect of our history as a context for why we may be where we are at this very moment. All of it feels like it echoes back to the protocols. And frankly, it really echoes back to 1,000 years ago in 1145, the first blood libel, when the Jews were accused of killing William of Norwich and using his blood to make matzah. Many Jews were killed for that. And then, 100 years later, I'm going to repeat that. 100 years later, the Pope said the Jews didn't do it. If you think that statement is hyperbolic or paranoid, Last week, I saw a video made by an Egyptian content creator that touted this exact lie, that Jews kill non-Jews and use that blood for matzah. The echo is found in like a tweak of the script to meet this time period. Just as the protocols were altered in Mexico to include the Jews manufacturing the Holocaust, or in Syria that the Jews coordinated the 9/11 attack, or the Jews orchestrated the pandemic, I believe that the script is followed askew. Now we are colonizers and oppressors and white supremacists who commit genocide and apartheid and starvation, and all of us, we are baby killers. All the worst sins of this day. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm mistaken when this specific violent vitriol directed towards our people these last 2 years feels like century-old Jew hatred. I hope that when this peace proposal, or if this peace proposal is accepted and works, I hope when the war ends, I hope when the hostages are returned, I hope when all the death is over, I hope everyone chooses to live with each other in peace. Then I hope that the heat is turned down against the Jewish people. I hope that all of us will be able to just scratch out the simple tune of our lives and live like we all deserve to live without someone trying to break our necks. Here's the thing. I am not Tevia. You are not Tevia. We are not the Jews of Anatevka. Los Angeles is not a shtetl. Beverly Hills is, well, Beverly Hills might be a little bit of a shtetl. Just like a tiny shtetl. Israel is not a shtetl, although right now, to me, it feels like Israel's this tiny little shtetl state in the big world. We as a people, we are no longer meek. In poverty, we're no longer separate from society. We don't have to suffer in silence like Anatevka. And frankly, we don't have to suffer at all because we are Jews. We live in a democracy where I can make this sermon from this bima, where we can raise our voices when we feel antisemitism, call out those who wish to hurt us, lodge complaints, sue, demonstrate, educate, hold public conversations, create public service announcements, write articles. We are not Tevia anymore. Israelis are not Tevia either, who could only stand and watch as his daughter's wedding was destroyed and sigh when the constable gave him 3 days to pack up everything and leave the town where he grew up and lived his entire life. In our shared historical experience, when groups of people are aggressive towards us and threaten Jewish communities, that threat is real. Israel is a country, a democratic nation with a military force that will not stand by and passively let their own destruction happen, but instead will repel all those who wish death to Jews. Period. So I know 2 seconds ago I said we're not Tevia, but he does have a point with a little bit of an edit. You may ask, why do we stay Jewish if it's so dangerous? We stay Jewish because that's who we are. And how do we keep our balance? That I can tell you in a word. Tradition. Jewish tradition, it has kept us in balance. But not the tradition that Tevya wanted or lived. It has always evolved. It has always adapted to the contemporary period. And the fact is, at the end of the movie, I think Tevya actually learns that. Temple Emmanuel is an example of the fluidity of Jewish tradition. Our Torah, with a little t, not just the 5 books of Moses, but all of it, the central piece of our tradition puzzle, is the ongoing conversation through generations and through centuries about how to live, each of us, now, in our lifetime. That ongoing flexibility of tradition has allowed us to remain true to our roots while adapting to the present day world. Your Judaism is yours, however you craft it, based upon how you need to find your spiritual balance. And that balance can fortify you with a sturdy base so that if or when you face discrimination because you're a Jew, or you have to have difficult conversation with someone who doesn't agree with you, that you can have it. Just picture Tevya's fiddle player up on that roof without any guardrails. It's shaky. It's unsteady. We can build a harness of knowledge. We can build a sturdy landing of culture and let our fiddler play loudly and proudly without fear of falling. You may ask, how did we get here? It wasn't easy. What I know, and I hope you do too, is that Judaism is a religion where harmony, compassion, peace, faith, love, logic, literature, and law all have a place, and much more. That's who we are. A people that chooses life, even when darkness and curse surround us. Doing that is how we got here in this room. Last week I talked a lot about rooms. This week I think I just shared my sadness, anger, and bewilderment rooms. And here's how I've decided I'm going to direct my energy towards those 3 rooms specifically. 3 things. I'm going to allow peace to enter my heart in some way from the peace of Shabbat every week. And 2, I'm going to consciously search for the dot of goodness in every person I come into contact with. That's Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. And 3, I'm going to try to gain insight about how to live better through the teachings of our tradition. I'm a rabbi, I get to do that. So do you. Our teaching this year, Therefore Choose Life, I hope that it can help me to find a way in the middle of all of this uncertainty to still live in the moment with gratitude and live in harmony with those around me. I think that's the hope of all Jewish people all throughout time. I pray that that is the hope of the state of Israel, to live in peace in their country. That is the hope of lasting peace that we sing about every single day, twice a day, 3 times a day in every single synagogue throughout this world. So let us all, together, continue to scratch out our pleasant tune and form a Jewish symphony of love and hope for our people and for the world. Can you hear Ratzon?